Glorious devotees, thank you for attending another presentation on Srila Jiva Goswami's Sri Krishna Sandarbha. We are now discussing in detail the Paribhasa Sutra, wherein Srila Jiva Goswami has first provided substantial evidence as to the significance of the Paribhasa Sutra, and he has proceeded from there to school us in, first of all, various instances in the Bhagavad Purana wherein one could come away from reading a specific verse with an incorrect understanding unless the proper application of the Paribhasa Sutra is utilized in studying the Srimad Bhagavatam. So we continue today where we left off in our last discussion. There's still a little bit more that Sri Jiva Goswami is presenting in his Krishna Sandarbha regarding the Mahakalapura episode. So he continues in his 29th Anucheta. Now we will explain the first statement of Sri Mahakala. So he's going to give us a more in-depth explanation of the statements in the Srimad Bhagavatam according to the proper understanding. So first he quotes the verse from the 10th canto, and this is spoken by Sri Mahakalapura Viṣṇu to Krishna and Balaram. He says therein, being desirous of seeing the two of you, Krishna and Arjuna, I had the sons of the Brahmā brought here to my abode. You have appeared on earth along with your parts, Kala, for the preservation of Dharma. After slaying the Asuras, who are a burden to the earth, quickly return here once again to me. Jiva writes, being desirous of seeing the two of you, the sons of the Brahmā were brought by me to my abode. This makes one sentence. Jiva continues, the second sentence is as follows. O he, you two have descended along with your parts for the preservation of Dharma. Kalavatir now is a compound in which the middle term has been elided. Alternatively, Kalavatir now could mean you two have descended in the material world, which is your partial potency. As confirmed in the Shruti, the material creation is 1/4 of his energy from the Rig Veda. Then again, after slaying the remaining Asuras, who are a burden to the earth, be quick to deliver them into my presence, which is to say, cause them to be liberated by placing them here. The latter meaning is justified, since it is well known that the Asuras killed by Krishna attain liberation. These liberated beings then enter into the effulgence of Mahakalapura. So Jiva has given us the proper wording of these two verses from the Srimad Bhagavatam, and he continues, Bhagavan Shri Krishna affirmed this matter to Arjuna in Harivamsa Purana. I am that divine immensity, Mahavishnu, replete with the effulgence of Brahmā, which you beheld, O best of the Bharats. Such is my eternal effulgence. It is my transcendental nature, which is eternal, manifest, and unmanifest. Entering it, the topmost realizers of yoga become liberated. The word tvareyetam is a form of the benedictive with the causative suffix used to indicate a petition or request. Anti is an indeclinable, in which the dative ending has been dropped. The fourth case is used as in the sentence, he goes forth to fetch fuel, which is governed by panini. An upapada, an adjoining word in this instance, a fourth case termination added to a word, occurs to express the object of a verb which, though not actually used in a sentence, denotes an action intended by another action. So we can see that Jiva Goswami is here using the deep understanding of Sanskrit to bring out for his students the proper understanding of this particular verse. So Jiva continues, and again, there's a lot of detail here that would be applicable to those who are well versed in Sanskrit, because that's what he's using to make clear the proper understanding of these verses. This is the logic that he's applying here. It's the proper application of Sanskrit. The use of a single object syntactically connected to two verbs is well known, as in the sentence, he makes and has delivered the mat. If, however, any other meaning is entertained, then to split one word into two will beget the defect of forced interpretation. Moreover, because of the non-application of the counterpositional prefix and, the verb itam is not to be interpreted as meaning return. Consequently, this meaning alone is clear and unforced. So we can see Jiva is breaking down very carefully the proper reading, or in our case, translation of the verse, so that the clear meaning of what Lord Vishnu is saying can be brought forth. And of course, he wants to bring forth that clear meaning in order that we understand the verses spoken by Mahakala, or Lord Vishnu, to Krishna and Arjuna in accordance with the Paribhasa Sutra. So we can see this is Shastra Yukti. Those expert in providing transcendental knowledge in human society are on the topmost platform of spiritual realization. They perfectly know all the scriptures, and they're able to relate them according to time, place, and circumstance. So in this instance, us as students well removed from Vedic culture and an in-depth study of Sanskrit and the Vedas and the various schools of philosophy can still gain much from simply our casual observance of the methodologies employed by Jiva Goswami to provide the evidence, the praman, in support of the Gaudiya understanding of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is extremely important to us in that we must approach Scripture, and because there's so much deep esoteric knowledge contained therein, our approach must be nourished by Shastra Yukti. And that Shastra Yukti is coming from those who are expert in providing arguments in support of the conclusions of the sampradaya that they represent. So the conclusions that we receive, the conclusions that we hear from our sampradaya and from our chain of disciplic succession are in support of those understandings which were revealed in human society by the gracious dispensation of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He gave a very specific contribution to humanity in that he provided access to the topmost spiritual revelation through his Sankirtan movement. And his revelation was fully documented by his immediate associates and fully supported by going to the scriptural canon. So by going to and extracting from the scripture, he was able to provide to humanity support for his Gaudiya perspective, his perspective regarding the topmost experience of the Supreme Reality or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although this seems to be extremely academic from our perspective in reading Jiva Goswami's Sandarbhas, what it gives us is a firm foundation in understanding the proper way to approach Scripture through the eyes of the acharyas within the sampradaya. Through their explanations, we're able to properly understand all the esoteric truths which will nourish our spiritual practice and properly keep us on the path to full revelation through the purification that comes through such hearing. So Jiva continues, and now, he says, we will explain the second statement. So he goes on, although you, Nara and Narayan, the foremost sages, are utterly fulfilled, yet you should still follow the path of Dharma to maintain the world order by setting an example for the people in general. So now some commentary to really bring this home so we can kind of enter into this profound narrative, because it is rather profound. It seems that Krishna and Arjuna are in a position of subordination to Lord Vishnu. Externally, it would appear that way. So how do we, as Gaudiyas, properly see this incident and properly understand this dialogue? So, although you two, Krishna and Arjuna, are the foremost, being the avataric source and the best of all avatars, and although you are utterly fulfilled for preservation of the world and in order to promote virtue among humankind, you are the two sages Nara and Narayan, among those who embody virtue. Thus, in accordance with this reading, Mahakala is referring to Nara and Narayan as vibhutis of Krishna and Arjuna, which is confirmed by Krishna himself later in the Srimad Bhagavatam, where he says, among the sages, I am Narayana Rishi. Having immediately intuited Krishna as superior to Mahakala, Arjuna realized all things as manifestations of the potency of Sri Krishna and not that of Mahakala. So Krishna is revealing all this to Arjuna, and Arjuna is coming to a profound realization. A realization that's not unlike that of Lord Brahmā himself during the Brahmā Vimohan Leela, wherein Brahmā was also schooled through revelation. So really it's the revelation, the traveling through the material universe and to the residence of Mahavishnu. This was part of the schooling that Arjuna received. The revelation and then the discourse and then understanding the discourse properly. Similarly, Brahmā, when Krishna revealed that he had taken on specific forms of all his cowherd friends and the calves that they were tending, before Lord Brahmā revealed that just as from me come all the various manifestations of Vishnu, who are the Purushas in all the material universes. So Jiva continues, that was just one little commentary on that one section. Jiva continues in this Anucheta and says the following, explaining the meaning. The meaning is as follows. You two are engaged in the welfare of the world, not only in this form, but in other magnificent forms as well, to glorify Krishna and Arjuna in this manner. He, Mahakala, speaks this verse. You two are the foremost because of being Swayam Bhagavan and his companion, which is to say that you two are the most excellent of all avatars and avataras. Although this is so, and although you are utterly fulfilled for preservation of the world, and in order to promote virtue among humankind, you are the two sages Nara and Narayan among those who embody virtue. In this way, there is mention of Nara and Narayan as vibhutis of Krishna and Arjuna, being their minor expansions. So here Jiva is making it clear that the proper understanding from the Gaudiya perspective is that the higher position, the hierarchy of the manifestations of the Supreme Lord that are descending into the material world or manifesting the material world are those of Krishna and his direct friend Arjuna. They are the source of all the various avatars, Krishna is, and a foremost avatar, Arjuna. Foremost, why? Because of his intimate friendship to Krishna that has already been fully explained earlier in this Anucheta. It is also stated by Bhagavan Sri Krishna in the 11th canto, in the course of describing his vibhutis, among the sages, Munis, I am Narayan Rishi. The sense is, Jiva writes, because you are the highest embodiment of virtue, I knew that you would surely come to deliver the sons of the Brahmana, and thus I acted in this way. Again, the underlying theme of the whole episode is Lord Vishnu wanted to have the audience of Lord Krishna and Arjuna. And although Krishna's within a universe enacting his Leela, entering into that Leela and fully understanding it is only available by the grace of Krishna himself. Even Lord Vishnu was not provided that opportunity, but he made an arrangement whereby he could have Krishna's direct audience through the stealing of the Brahmana's children. Additionally, there is Sri Krishna's statement in Harivamsa Purana. That Supreme Self, Mahakala, abducted the boys of the Brahmana for the sake of procuring a vision of me. He conjectured as follows: Krishna will come for the sake of the Brahmana, otherwise he will not come here at all. In the verse under discussion, the word acharatam is not to be taken in the sense of acharatam, imperative of the second person dual of the verb achara, and thus it has not been explained in that way. Therefore, Krishna's superiority even to Mahakala is proven. This will also be demonstrated by the discussion from Mrityunjaya Tantra. In accordance with this very glory, Sri Sukha said, seeing the wonderful abode of Lord Mahavishnu, Arjuna was exceedingly astonished. He realized that whatever prowess is possessed by human beings is brought about only through the grace of Bhagavan Krishna. This Mahakalapura episode concludes as follows. Here it is not stated that such prowess is accomplished through the grace of Mahakala. Similarly, Swami Pad's, referring to Sridhar Swami's, introductory remark to this episode, given at the beginning of his commentary on its first verse, accords precisely with this conclusion. To show that Bhagavan, having the above-mentioned characteristics, is none other than Sri Krishna, Sukadeva relates another story beginning with this verse. This chapter begins with an inquiry as to who is the supreme God among Brahmā, Vishnu, and Shiva. This chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam's 10th canto, 89th chapter. In answer to this, Sukadeva first recounts the story of sage Bhrigu, who tested all three of them and concluded that Vishnu was supreme. Following this, Sukadeva begins a new narration concerning the Brahmana and his sons in Dwarka. While introducing his commentary on the opening verse of this second episode, Sridhar Swami writes, to show that Bhagavan, having the above-mentioned characteristics, is none other than Sri Krishna, Sukadeva relates another story beginning in this verse. Thus, Sridhar Swami concurs that the whole purpose of this episode is to show that Krishna is superior even to Mahakala and not vice versa. So what we're seeing is a really interesting insight into the narrative from the 89th chapter of the Bhagavatam. That first, there was a question among sages of which of the various guna avatars of the Supreme Lord is supreme. And Bhrigu Muni did test all three of them, and he concluded that Vishnu was the supreme. He was the most understanding. We're not going to enter into the details of that narrative here, but then in order to show that Krishna is even superior to Lord Vishnu of the various guna avatars, so to show that Krishna has a position that's superior to the Purusha avatar and to that aspect of the Purusha, Lord Vishnu, who presides over the mode of goodness, whereas Brahmā and Shiva reside over the modes of passion and ignorance respectively, Sukadeva went forward and related this pastime of the death of the Brahmana's sons and Arjuna's vow to protect them, resulting in Krishna and Arjuna traveling to Mahakalapura, the residence of Mahakala, or the Mahavishnu. And therein we can see that because of the way that incident unfolded, as related by Sukadeva, that even Lord Vishnu had to make and receive a special darshan of Krishna, that he did not have entrance into the Leela without making this arrangement. A little bit more from the commentary. In this manner, Śrīla Jiva Goswami has resolved the apparent contradiction between the Bhagavat's Paribhasa Sutra, Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam, and some of its other verses that seem to regard Krishna as an integrated portion of Vishnu, or the Purusha. Next, Śrī Jiva addresses similar verses from other scriptures. I'll continue in our next class with the next section of this 29th Anucheta. You can see this 29th Anucheta is extremely detailed, and it's a very, very interesting exploration and explanation by Jiva Goswami for our proper comprehension of the various manifestations of the Supreme Lord. So in this next section, he will go into the keśa avatars of Vishnu and a narrative there from other sources besides the Bhagavat Purana, to bring up a narrative from the Mahabharata and other scriptures wherein there could be a misunderstanding again regarding this position of Krishna as Swayam Bhagavan and that of the Purushas who manifest the material worlds. Vanchakapatubhyascha kripasindhubhyevacha patitanam pamanebhyo vaishnavijya namo namaha. Hare Krishna.
धीरा धीर जना प्रियौ प्रिय करौ निर्मत्सरौ पूजितौ